Welcome to the Fall River Conservation Commission meeting, Monday, December 7th, 5:30. We're on Zoom by Fred TV. Pursuant to the open meeting laws, any person may make an audio or video recording of this public meeting or may transmit this meeting through any medium. Attendees are therefore advised that such recordings or transmissions are being made, whether perceived or unperceived, by those present and are deemed acknowledged and permissible. First on the agenda tonight is notice of intent, OI number file number SE-24-755. Owner applicant is ASE Investment LLC. Project location is 69 Arlen Street. Assessor's map is J-27-9. Filed by SciTech Inc. on behalf of the applicant ASE Investment LLC to construct a 16-unit multifamily townhouse development with associated grading and facilities. A portion of the project falls within the 100-foot buffer zone to border and vegetated wetlands and bank. A portion of proposed lawn area falls within the riverfront area, A zone flood hazard area, continued from November 2nd meeting, 2020.
Hey, John?
Is Dan with us?
John, do we have to do a roll call first?
Yeah. Oh, yep, I'm sorry, forgot the roll call there, sorry, jumping ahead. Let's see, roll call, Louis Farrer?
Yep.
Just say here. Andy Liss,
Yep.
Galter Amaral,
Yes.
Jim Hornsby,
Here, yes.
John Brand here, then we have Patty Aguiar, clerk, and Bill Kenny from the city planning office, and Fred TV, Alex doing the filming. So I guess we're waiting on Dan for this one.
Well, actually, Chairman, the reason this is on the agenda tonight is that at the last meeting, you approved the issuance of an order of conditions. And it was only continued until this meeting so that I could prepare special conditions to add to the order of conditions. And I emailed the proposed special conditions to all the members today. I've reviewed them with Mr. Aguiar, who represents the proponent of the project. He and I are in agreement that these are appropriate. And if you folks have all read them and agree that they're appropriate, the right vote would be to authorize them to be attached to the order of conditions, and then the order can be issued.
I think we got everything in the conditions. There's 10 conditions we set. Did
I
everyone
just
read them?
had,
I know we have in there, Jim, you had something about the fertilizer. We have only organic fertilizer.
yeah, that's the point. That's
So that's
my
in there.
point. Yeah, my point is there isn't much chemical difference between organic and chemical, which I think is what it's meant to contrast. In other words, horse manure is quite organic. So is pig manure, as we found out near the lake. There simply shouldn't be any fertilizer with phosphates, or organic doesn't make a difference, but if you want to leave it in there, that's fine. They've got to ask permission from the Conservation Commission before any fertilizer, but
Yeah, we do have one that must be approved by the Fall River Conservation Commission.
but I suggest we remove the organic reference.
So
There's also
that's
one
in there.
typing error, which I'm trying to find. It's an LAN and there's no D. And it's there. But otherwise, I'm very pleased with this. Thank you, Bill.
Pleased that you're pleased, and I found the typo.
What number, Bill?
It's number 9, line 3, where it says AWN, it should say LAWN. That's my mistake,
No,
believe it or not.
that's the first mistake I've known you to make in several
Today,
years, several years.
you're too kind.
So if
But,
it's
but,
the
but
board's,
do you agree with me on the organic and stuff that it doesn't really matter?
I don't know enough about fertilizer to answer that.
Well, I'm telling you that horse manure is not good next to the lake for obvious reasons.
I guess we can remove the organic if that's
The reference to
fine.
organic, yeah.
How about if we ask Mr. Aguirre what he thinks about that? He had suggested the use of the word.
Yeah, I have no issue with removing the word organic. We did put the provision in there that the commission has to approve whatever fertilizer is chosen. The initial condition that was approved was specifically having to do with nitrogen and phosphates. That's why we crafted the condition to read that way. But if the Reverend has a concern with having the word organic there, by all means, it can be removed, and that any fertilizer to be utilized shall be approved prior to application by the Conservation Commission.
Yeah.
So we could basically just remove the second sentence of paragraph 8.
Yeah, I'm trying to get there.
Yeah.
And that would remove the typo as well.
Two birds with one stone.
Right.
Okay, so on the conditions, everyone's read it. If it's okay with the commission, we'll just vote on the conditions instead of reading them, unless you want me to read them into the minutes. It's up to, it could just be easier to take a vote on all the conditions as one. That's
Yeah,
fine?
Chairman, they've
Any
been
objections?
filed with the clerk and everybody's read them. I don't think you have to read them into the record. They're already in the record.
All righty. So can I have a motion to have a vote on the special
I'll make
conditions?
that motion.
Second,
I'll second that motion. Oh, there you go.
Who
Okay.
seconded it? Sorry.
That was Jim.
that was Walter. Anyway, either one.
Mhm.
Okay. We'll take a vote. Louis?
Yes.
Louis? Yes.
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Andy?
Yes.
Jim?
Yes.
John? Yes. Vote passes 4-0.
5-0.
5.
We
Thank
have
you, Louis.
5 now.
What's that?
We have 5 people now. It's 5-0.
Oh, yeah. Gotta get used to Lewis. Okay, moving on to the next item is the amended order of conditions NOI SE-24-728. Owner applicant is TM Crawley and Associates. Project location is 64 Stevens, Assessors Map E-27-4. So. Amended conditions. Let's see. Bill, are you okay with all these amended conditions?
Well, I'd like to have the TM Crowley and Associates or their representative make the presentation. It's kind of a complicated
Okay.
situation. And the background on this is that it came to our attention that there were certain changes in the execution of the plan that were not really contemplated in the original order of conditions. So in that eventuality, it's really incumbent upon the applicant to submit an amended proposal so that we can issue an amended order of conditions. So that's where we're at, and I think we should let them describe what the changes have been. And I know we have some folks who would like to address this. I know Mr. Aguirre is here representing an abutter who might like to be heard. And then we have a representative of the condominium association, which abuts this property, and maybe some other folks who would like to be heard. But I think we should start with the proponents describing the changes that have been made from the original plan.
Okay. John, would you like to go first?
You're muted.
Yeah, unmute yourself, John.
Sorry about that. John Marchand from Portland Corp. We're the civil engineers for the project. We were last before the commission last summer in August of 2019, I believe. We had an order of conditions issued for the project on September 10th, 2019. Since that time, we've gone in front of the site plan review committee. We've taken their comments and implemented them into our final site plan. And we've
Excuse me, but I'm having a lot of trouble hearing you. Could you try and speak as clearly as you can? Thank
Sure.
you.
So we've taken the comments from the site plan review committee and incorporated those into our final site plans. And we've also kind of created a construction set of drawings. So some of the changes to the plan I would consider pretty minimal, but if you have the amended order request letter in front of you, I can go through each bulleted item, or if you prefer, I could just kind of discuss what I would call the substantive changes.
Chairman, I'd suggest he walk through the letter and just to sort of put it me in more layman's terms than some of the languages, just to walk it through.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
Could I share my screen to pull up the plan set?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. It's saying it's disabled.
Alex, are you able to give him co-host ability?
So, Bill, what did you want to, I didn't hear that last thing you said.
Say again?
You said the last request, I didn't hear it.
No,
About
I
the
was
letter?
just suggesting that Mr. Marchand might go through his November 3rd letter and just highlight the points that are made there. And in some cases, maybe put it in more layman's terms to make it easier for the commissioners to follow and for me to follow too.
So it's not allowing me to share my screen, but I can go through the list of bulleted items. Basically what I did was list each plan in the set and what changes were made to it. So on the cover plan, we added underground storage tank plans to the plan set that weren't included in the original submission to the Conservation Commission. And also some additional detail on the car wash utilities inside the car wash portion of the building. And then the overall site layout plan shown on the cover sheet was revised to reflect the other changes that were made to the site plan. And we also added some utility and contacts for the city on the cover plan. And then, so that's the changes that were on the title sheet. There were no changes to CFG 0.1 plan. CFG 0.2 and 0.221 are the existing conditions plan. And the only changes on those plans were an updated title commitment, there's a new owner of the property, so that was revised to reflect the new owner. And then at the time that the new owner took ownership, the previous bank drive-through building had been demolished, so that was reflected in that plan as demolished. CFG 3.0 is a demolition plan. And the items that changed on that were our site driveway access from Brayton Avenue as part of the site plan review committee review, that driveway shifted about 2 feet to the north to get it out of the state highway layout. So all the work is outside of that layout. So the demolition of the curb in that area was shifted to accommodate that driveway. And then there was also proposed work on Stevens Street. The plan that was approved or that the order of conditions were issued upon by the did not show any sidewalks, proposed sidewalks on Stevens Street as part of the site plan review committee had suggested or asked that we add sidewalks, new sidewalks on Stevens Street, crosswalks, one at Burton and one at Baird Street. So the edge of the roadway in that area has also been a cut line was added on Stevens Street to accommodate the new curving for the sidewalk. On the site layout plan, CFG 4.0, the items that changed were the driveway that I just mentioned, the sidewalks and crosswalks on Stevens Street that I just mentioned. The footprint of the convenience store shifted kind of where it bumps out. The bump out was reduced a little bit. It ended up adding 80 square feet to the building. So that's the new Cumberland Farms prototype store. The remote fill stations at the underground storage tanks were revised so that they don't need remote fills to fill the tanks anymore, so those were removed. There was a concrete pad.
Excuse me, are you still on 4.0?
4.0, yes.
Okay.
There's a concrete pad at the exit of the car wash. It's a heated pad. The length of that was reduced from 20 feet to 10 feet. And then there was a small island at the entrance of the car wash to the right of the entrance aisle into the car wash. That was converted from a landscape stone island to a painted island. And then there's a large retaining wall along the eastern side of the site. That was changed from a Ready Rock type wall to a Versalock type wall. They're both segmental block retaining walls. It's just a different manufacturer of block. Also, a stop sign was added at Brayton Avenue. The handicap parking space in front of the building was adjusted to the center of the door of the C-store. And then
What is a C-store?
the convenience store.
I thought it was a car wash.
It's a Cumberland Farms convenience store with an attached car wash.
Okay. With the gas station.
Right.
Phew.
And then also on 4, the transformer pad for the electric service was located closer toward Baird Street intersection as a result of the electric company requesting the transformer be moved in that location. On CFG 5, the grading plan, we added some slope labels to the parking lot area. So it's just additional information. The grades themselves didn't change. It's just additional information on those. And also at the outlet, the piped outlets from the underground stormwater systems, where they exit the retaining wall, we added some riprap outlet protection, and there's also
Why did you add riprap? Does that mean there's water? Is this rip to prevent water from going into the wetlands, or is it?
It's to prevent scour or any kind of erosion at the where the pipes come out. And also as part of that riprap outlet, we added the word's escaping me. Level spreader, a 30-foot long level spreader to induce the flow to a more of a sheet flow. So those were the changes to CFG 5. On CFG 6, which is the erosion control. Oh.
Does any of the board members have any question? Louis, any questions?
I'm having trouble hearing you too, John. Did you just say that?
I said, does any of the board members have any questions?
I'd like to hear what the abutters say. I don't really understand this. This seems like a lot of change.
Well, Don DeRosa here from Winchester Lane. It does seem like a lot of changes, but none of them seem terribly significant as far as the condo association is concerned. There seem to be a lot of small changes. None of them seem to be significant as far as the overall project is concerned. I see changes in materials, small movements of utilities here and there. I don't hear of any radical things that affect the overall scope of the project. I'm not trying to minimize any of the changes, but and it does seem to be a lot of individual changes, but nothing that affects the project as a whole. But I'll yield to anybody else. I'm eager to hear everybody else's comments.
Now,
Thank you.
how is
Mr.
the
Chairman.
condominium association related to this project?
I'm sorry, sir?
How are you related to this project?
The condominium association abuts the product. We're Winchester Lane, which is
Right, but you don't have any ownership of it.
no, sir.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
Mr. Chairman, could I just make a comment?
Sure.
First, I see some other Zoom meetings where it works better if people sort of raise their hand if they want to
Okay.
speak, and maybe the chairman could keep an eye out for that and recognize people in the order in which they raise their hand. But what I really wanted to say was we're only at, I don't know, 25% of the way through the discourse on these plans. I have read them all, and I do agree with Don that most of these are, small changes that probably won't affect the condominium association's interests. But I would like, if folks want to move forward with this sort of line by line review, I would ask Mr. Marchand to just focus on those that would be of particular interest to the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. I don't think we care particularly whether a stop sign's been added at Brayton Avenue or not, but we would be interested in finding out if anything's been done that might impact or potentially impact either the buffer zone or the wetlands area,
Right,
things having to do with drainage and stormwater and items like that. So maybe if Mr. Marchand could just go through the rest of this letter and highlight those items, then we could maybe see if there's anybody such as Mr. Aguirre representing an abutter that would like to comment on those particular issues, or any members of the committee that might have a question whether these changes impact the wetlands or the buffer in such a way that would justify some change on our part of this.
I certainly agree with that, Mr. Kinney.
Sure, thank you. So the only changes to the plan that really have any effect on the stormwater runoff toward the wetland would be that additional square footage of the convenience store building, the additional 80 square feet. And we did run the calculations to show that with those additional 80 square feet, it does not affect the the pre-development versus post-development runoff rate was still well below the pre-existing runoff rates with that additional impervious area. It's actually not additional impervious area, it's just roof area taking place of sidewalk area. And then, like I said, the scour protection at the piped outlets that had previously, the plans previously did not show any scour protection, so that was added after the order of conditions was issued. But that would just provide additional protection to the resource area. Like I said, all the other changes are would have no impact on the resource area.
If any questions from the board, if you could just raise your hand. No questions. Dan Agar, do you have something to add?
I do. Thank you, John. I was called by the easterly abutter, 168 Stephen Street LLC, who is the easterly abutter that has approximately 80 to 100 feet of upland between the Cumberland Farms parcel and the bordering vegetated wetland. If you have your plan sets with you, if you want to go to CFG 5.0, which is the drainage and grading plan, that pretty much sums up the majority of the concerns. So the owner of that parcel contacted me first to look at potentially doing some work on his own property. And that brought us into looking into the work that had been permitted and approved already for the Cumberland Farms. And then he was notified that there was an amended order being requested with regards to the site itself. So I had penned a letter back at the end of November, which I do think you all have a copy of. At least I'm hoping that you do have a copy of it. Addressed to the commission. I did also, as a courtesy, email this to Mr. Marchand and Christian Farland of Farland Corp. On December 4th, I believe, as well. I wanted to make sure that they had it in advance of the meeting, so that this wasn't something that was just sprung on them at the last minute. So if I could, I think it would be best if I just read in the letter of objection that the applicant has. And it's not to the project as a whole. It's very specific to the stormwater management system and the effects that it might have on his property moving forward. So in my letter, if you want to read along, if you have a copy, I've stated the abutting property owners, 168 Stephen Street LLC, parcel E27-6 of the above referenced property have retained the services of SciTech/CEC Inc. in response to the recently filed notice of intent. The abutting landowner has no objection to the project as a whole, but does have a serious concern with how the proposed stormwater management system has been designed and how it will function. The following summary of concerns are based upon our review of the recently submitted cover letter dated November 3rd, 2020 from Farland Corp. Plan set with the latest revision date of June 2nd, 2020, and stormwater report with the latest revision of November 3rd, 2020. The summary of our concerns, item number 1, and it pretty much all revolves around this item. The 2 proposed 12-inch drainage outfall pipes, point source discharges, located along the easterly boundary line of parcel E27-6, which is my client's parcel, are unacceptable. The 12-inch drains discharge stormwater less than 10 feet from the property line and will need to flow over 80 feet of usable upland area to reach the adjacent bordering vegetated wetland. This condition will result in flooding and erosion of the upland portion of parcel E27-6. This is a clear violation of the requirements set forth through the Wetlands Protection Act and the Department of Environmental Protection Stormwater Management Standards, and will significantly impact our client's property. This is a significant change from the existing sheet flow conditions of what occurs on the site now. So if I could elaborate a little bit on item number 1, just so that everyone understands what is happening. This site has pretty much been filled 4 to 5 feet by the installation of a retaining wall very close to our property line. stormwater from this site, off of the roofs and off of the paved systems, are directed to underground plastic chambers, which I think you're all somewhat familiar with. Those chambers then discharge outside of the retaining wall, so just holes in the sides of the retaining wall that discharge less than 10 feet from our property line. Now, it would be one thing if our entire property was a wetland, and then he would just be dumping into a wetland, but that's not the case. This stormwater that's collected, that normally would be in a sheet flow condition over the entire site flowing towards us, is now being collected and put into two pipes that we're going to discharge onto our property over our upland area, which is usable land, before it even gets to the wetland. So I don't think that there is any concern with regards to the resource area being the wetland. What the concern is how detrimental this will be to my client's land, and discharging stormwater onto a neighbor's land is just strictly prohibited, both in the Wetlands Protection Act, Mass General Law, and the Site Plan Review Committee standards of the City of Fall River. Additionally to just the location of these two discharge points, we have significant concern with regards to how they were designed and the calculations provided to you. And that brings us to item number 2. The stormwater management system design relies heavily on the infiltration of collected runoff. As stated in the stormwater management report provided, the existing NRCS soil survey indicates that the area is comprised of unassigned hydrologic group soils. So what that means is that the state, or actually it's federal, when they do mapping of different soil types, they tell you what kind of drainage class you have. A lot of the times in the city, because it's an urban environment, that testing never took place. The design engineer is utilizing a hydrologic group soil C with a Rawls infiltration rate of 0.27 inches per hour for the design, and is doing so by relying on the results of soil borings performed for structural stability, not soil permeability. So basically what that brings you down to is when the drainage calculations rely on these soils to take a certain amount of water and infiltrate it into the ground, they're relying on soil tests that were done by geologists or whoever did them with regards to how suitable the soil is for foundations, not the permeability of the soil. Normally in a situation like this, there will be soil testing that's done and a percolation test run, so you can see, is the soil sandy and it will accept a lot of water, or is it dense? Is it fine? Will it not infiltrate a lot of water? Just like a septic system on that idea. So moving forward in our comments, soil evaluations and percolation rate testing should be performed in the parent material at various locations within the area of the proposed infiltration basins, and revised calculations prepared and submitted. When we get into dealing with specific Rawls rates, which are the infiltration rates that we can use, DEP has a set of stormwater guidelines. And for a C soil, it ranges between 0.27 and 0.017 inches per hour. The design engineer took the most liberal approach with the best soil conditions without doing any soil testing. So one, I have a question of whether or not we even have C soils. And then on top of that, to take a rate for the best C soil, I think is inappropriate in this situation. So without specific testing, the slower rate should have been utilized. This required soil testing will also determine the seasonal high groundwater elevation observed in the location of these proposed infiltration systems. Again, in DEP's stormwater management policy, the bottoms of these systems need to be sitting at least 2 feet above groundwater. No formal testing was performed to determine where groundwater was observed in any of these locations. So that's something that clearly should be done. Again, relying on soil borings performed for soil stability and bearing capacity is not sufficient where a normal soil evaluation where we can observe soil modeling to determine where groundwater elevation would be observed and designed is really the appropriate way to go. Additionally, with reviewing some of the plans, it's kind of difficult to find with these two outfall pipes, and I hope you all see them on the plan. If you're looking at the plan to the far left, you see a dark bold line in between the two properties, which would be the retaining wall, and then you see two dashed lines that run perpendicular to that, one at the closer end of Brayton Avenue and then one a little bit deeper into the site. Those are just 12-inch pipes that are going to come out of the face of this wall, where this stormwater collected on this site is going to come flowing out of a 12-inch pipe and run onto the upland portions of our site. That's just unacceptable. Whether it's flowing through riprap or whether it's flowing over a level spreader, that does nothing for taking the volume of water that normally would come to our site that would stretch out along the entire property boundary and collecting it and putting it out of 12-inch pipes. I don't think you need to understand much about drainage to understand the difference between that. It's basically the difference of, okay, water's going to spill over the edge of your tub if you overflow it, but over the entire distance around the tub compared to when you turn the faucet on and how much water comes out just at that one location. So I think you can see that these two outfall pipes are not appropriate discharge points at that close to the property line of a property that is developable and has upland area. So we have a concern with regards to those two discharge points, and that should be resolved in some form or fashion. Additionally, the construction on the site has progressed quite a bit, and technically without a permit from this commission. The amended order was submitted to you, or the applicants were aware of the need to file such, and construction has not stopped. It could be argued that a cease and desist order should have been placed upon the project until this was reviewed, so that we didn't get into a situation where stuff was already installed and then they had to go out and take it out. I do understand that they have tight construction timelines. However, items like this and concerns like this cannot be just overlooked. So I request that the commission look at the letter, listen to the concerns of our client, the budding property owner, and ask the engineering firm that did the work to go back and look at a few different resolutions to this drainage issue. And there are a number of them. There are site-specific engineering solutions that can take place, the appropriate soil testing with regards to porosity and separation to groundwater. And there is also the ability to acquire a drainage easement through the abutting property, or even the purchase of the abutting property, so that stormwater can continue to flow over the upland portion to the wetland. So if the commission has any questions with regards to our concerns, I'd be more than glad to answer any of them, as well as I'd be more than glad to answer any questions that the proponent may have, specifically Mr. Marchand from Farland Corp. I think that's.
Members have any questions? Louis?
But again,
Louis, go ahead.
Thank you. So, Mr. Agia, I read the letter, and I think there's some valid concerns there. There's actually a lot to chew on there, but would you recommend multiple discharge points instead of just the two?
well, that could be one. And again, the purpose of me sending the letter to the applicant's engineer last week was in hopes that we could have a conversation with regards to that. So again, it's not for me to design the project for the proponent. However, yes, you're thinking along an idea that, potentially could be better. It's never going to be identical or equivalent to the way stormwater enters our site now. Right now, we have a sheet flow condition over that entire length of property line where stormwater runs off of a grass site, which is what was originally out there for the most part, flowing over ground, over vegetated areas through our property to the wetland. And that is done in a sheet all the way down to the wetland. Anytime you take an area and put it in any type of a point source discharge or a piped outlet, although you may say at the end of the day, the amount of water entering the site is no more than what it was previously, it's that it's entering it all in one location. So yes, you understand already some drainage design that multiple, now of course there's an infinite number of multiple. The best scenario would be if you took the entire property and allowed stormwater to flow over the property line continuously at an even point to match what it does now. That could potentially be a way. My concern is that this is all constructed, I think, for the most part. And beyond just figuring out, where to put the pipe point source discharges, they're relying entirely on this stormwater to infiltrate the ground with no soil testing. It's one thing, again, if you're adjacent to a wetland directly and whatever water is coming out of those pipes, whatever it is, it's not going to affect anyone. But this will clearly have an effect on the upland portion of the neighbor's site. And that's how the concern came to be, was he asked me, what can I do with my piece of land? So I did some investigation, some research, and as I'm looking at, how much land we have available and what we could do, how would we deal with these two pipe discharges? The easiest way to deal with them would be to pipe them closer to the wetland and not run over our property. However, that they don't own the land to do that. And that does bring those point source discharges closer to a wetland where they don't discharge to now. So again, although it's not my job to come up with a new resolution to this, I would ask the commission to ask that construction activity cease on the site until some type of resolution or revised design could be resubmitted, and hopefully it's acceptable to both my client and the commission as well.
Okay. Is it Mark? You have a question?
Attorney Michael Kehoe, Mr. Chair, and I do represent TM Crowley. I want to just point out that many of the comments in Mr. Aguiar's letter were designed in the originally approved plans, order of conditions, and to my knowledge, no one took an appeal of that. I do think it's interesting. One of your last comments, Mr. Aguiar, was your client might be interested in selling an easement or his land.
That's good.
But the things that changed were, as I think I heard, quite honestly, many things changed, but most were very, very minor, and they had nothing to do with wetlands protection. What did was the 80 square foot addition to the Cumberland Farms convenience store, 80 square feet. So, and we've had Mr. Marchand testify that basically has no change in the calculations that were originally presented. And then the other change, so there's two things which affect the wetlands or your buffer zone. And one of them was the 80 square foot addition, and the other was the riprap, which actually is a benefit, not a detriment. And I don't hear anything about that being a detriment. So I would respectfully suggest that we focus on the change and not do a well after the fact, time limited, time barred appeal of the original decision.
Mr. Chairman, if I may respond, my client, when we first approached and we had a conversation, was unaware of the initial filing and the green slip that we were able to uncover as being signed was no one from his office or himself. So he was unaware of the initial application. We would have appealed it then, and we will be appealing it now. And that's why we've stated that work should cease until this gets resolved. If the commission wants to throw away our concerns, that will not be the end of my abutters' concerns. We will appeal the amended order immediately. The applicant has the ability to remove the entire project from the buffer zone, and they don't even have to appear before the Conservation Commission. That's another option that they have. But under the Wetlands Protection Act, we were notified as an abutter to these changes for this plan. And we request that these items be resolved, or the applicant will appeal this decision.
Mr. Marchand, do you have anything on this?
Sure. If I could speak to the first point about the point source discharge. The intent of the 30-foot long level spreaders at each outlet is to induce a sheet flow condition as opposed to a concentrated flow from the pipe. We feel that providing a 30-foot long level spreader at each at each piped outlet does create that sheet flow condition. In existing conditions, the entire site does not, it's not completely sheet flow. There is an existing, or there was an existing detention basin associated with the bank drive-through that did have a point source discharge from that basin toward the abutting property. It's not quite as close to the property line as we're proposing, but there was a previous point source discharge that was allowed to flow overland toward the abutting property. But we do feel that the level spreaders provide that sheet flow as opposed to a concentrated flow straight from a pipe. As far as the soil conditions on site, those soil conditions and groundwater conditions have been verified prior to excavation of the subsurface system. The soils were consistent with what was designed. We did run calculations based on the lower sea soil infiltration rate. And again, the post-development runoff rates were consistently below the pre-existing conditions, even with the assumed worst case condition of the sea soils. I think that the concerns with the stormwater design, I think we did address those with the level spreader outlets.
Mr. Chairman, Dan Aguirre again, if I may. I don't believe that any of that additional soil testing or calculations were submitted to the commission for review. With regards to the existing condition, the existing point source discharge is at a distance approximately 50 to 60 feet from the property line, not 10 feet. So by the time water does come out over that level spreader 50 feet away, I agree, it probably does have a chance to spread out a little bit more and become a sheet flow condition. However, if that point source discharge was 10 feet from the property, I would have the same concerns. If you took these 2 point source discharges and moved them 50 feet away from the property line, then you are giving it time to establish a sheet flow condition. That is not going to happen. You can't even tell us how much water is coming out of these pipes and if they've been designed correctly with the amount of riprap being so short and the level spreader being provided. There is clearly zero confidence in the way that this system was designed that my client's property will be protected in the manner that it should. Again, this is usable upland. This is not a wetland area that accepts stormwater directly currently. So I would ask the commission at best to ask construction to cease. And if the applicant wants to provide this additional testing for review by both the commission and myself, then maybe that's a way to start. However, moving forward and allowing construction to continue without a permit, I think is inappropriate.
Yeah. I would like to see some testing done or the latest testings that you've done on the soil. Bill, how are we going this route?
I think Lewis had a question.
Oh, Lewis?
You're muted.
Just a question about, I understand it's under construction. Are the recharge systems under construction or are they not installed yet?
They're partially installed, yes.
And during that time, was groundwater encountered?
No, we had them excavate underneath the bottom of the system to determine the depth of groundwater, and we were above the 2 feet of separation.
What was that depth you said?
There was 2 feet of separation provided between the bottom of the soil absorption system and the estimated seasonal high groundwater.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if that information is actually accessible, it should be put on these plans as part of the approval stamped by the professional engineer stating that this soil capacity and observation of seasonal high groundwater, not just where you observe water, but by where soil modeling was observed, and that's how you determine seasonal high groundwater, was in fact done, and shouldn't be just simply from a conversation during a Conservation Commission hearing. It should be part of the file, it should be part of the plan set, and the calculations.
Okay. Did you have another question, Attorney Markey?
No, I don't have a question, but I certainly don't have a problem with making that a condition, that it be submitted as part of the plan. I certainly don't, I have no reason to doubt Mr. Marchand's veracity in terms of what was observed, and they can put that on the plan. Make that a condition, we'll accept it.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, Dan Aguirre again. I don't think the commission has the ability at this point to move this project with simply placing conditions. I think this is information that should be added to the plan set, submitted, reviewed, and either approved or disapproved. But to simply make that item just a condition of approval, I feel is inappropriate. And regardless of the soil conditions or the sizing of these infiltration systems, that does nothing with regards to 2-point source discharges coming out of that retaining wall, dumping stormwater onto my client's property, which again brings us back to item number 1 within our summary of concerns.
Yeah.
So I would ask that the commission table this matter until this appropriate information or revised plans are submitted and reviewed.
Mr. Chairman, could
Yes,
I just
go ahead.
ask Mr. Aguirre, are you suggesting just a simple table? Or are you asking the commission to order a cease and desist, issue a cease and desist order?
Well, that's really up to the commission, because they may find at the end of all of this that you move the project in a positive manner. I can't see how that would happen, and we would appeal it. But one, we would like to see that soil testing, those results. And we would like to see some modification to this plan that removes 2-point source discharges in some form or fashion to a more acceptable practice of transferring stormwater from one upgradient property to a lower, so that it can traverse its way down to the bordering vegetated wetland. So by no means am I in any place to ask the board to grant the cease and desist. That would be, that's beyond my purview or the ability to ask for. But it could be potentially something that the commission is interested in doing. Or just making sure that the applicant understands that moving forward with construction the way that they have been will be at their own, potentially at their own demise.
Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I agree, Mr. Aguirre. If somehow we were to table this to give you and the proponent an opportunity to talk about this, I think I'd much rather see some talking rather than going directly to issuing a cease and desist order. And as you say, if the proponent, knowing that there's this issue, proceeds with construction that might bar future solutions, they do it at their risk. So I don't know, my inclination would be, but well, let me ask this. You say you sent your November 24th letter, which outlined those 2 major points to the proponent, but they have not
Well,
responded to that? Or?
To the proponent's engineer.
Okay.
I have no direct contact with the proponent themselves.
Have you spoken with the proponent's engineers about those 2 issues prior to
Nope.
tonight?
I asked them in that email to get back to me if they wanted to sit down and discuss it prior to tonight's hearing, and I got no response.
Okay, so I think one possibility is to table this for maybe 2 weeks and have a special meeting to, to move things along, but table it on the supposition that you and the engineer for the proponent would talk turkey about this and to see if there's some solution that can be arrived at. I do think it's a serious condition that has to be addressed. You have the scouring of your upland of your client, and that's under normal circumstances, wouldn't that result in some civil liability if you're impacting your neighbor's property?
Yes, absolutely.
So it behooves them to address this issue now before it comes to that eventuality. So maybe if
I would
it's,
think so.
maybe it would be the proper thing to table it for 2 weeks and to have everybody come back and at that point, see if you've been able to work out a solution. Just a thought.
Yeah, I think we could certainly reach out to Mr. Aguirre and discuss potential ways to address his concerns.
Mr. Aguirre, does it make sense to you to do that?
Absolutely. Our offices are only a few hundred feet apart, so it wouldn't be very difficult to do that, and I would appreciate that. And again, as I stated initially, my client is not opposed to this project at all. If anything, if done correctly, would increase the value of his property. However, drainage is a big deal. I mean, 80% of what we all do as engineers and permitting projects is related to drainage in some form or fashion. So do I think we can come to a resolution? I think so, and I hope we could within these 2 weeks.
Could I just ask you sort of a related question, Mr. Aguirre? These two outflow pipes
Yes,
are 10 feet from your client's property, right?
approximately from what I can scale on the reduced size plans, yes.
10 feet, okay. So this project also went through the site plan review process.
That's correct.
And my recollection is that site plan approval always has a paragraph that states something to the effect that if the project results in increased stormwater flow onto the neighbor's property, that question is going to have to be addressed. Is that your understanding?
That is correct, but that's a different fight and a different dog dealing with the site.
Different fight, different dog, but
Same
related
issue.
issue.
That you are correct.
And it would be, I think, sensible for everybody to resolve the issue now before it becomes a site plan review issue.
That's correct.
So 2 weeks from today would be, let's see, 21st of December, first day of winter. I'm going to just suggest we table it to 5:30 on December 21st, and the parties talk and report back to us then. If that's agreeable to the parties and to the board, that would be my recommendation.
Okay.
That's
On
agreeable.
behalf of the applicant, you would agree to a continuance until 12/21/20 at 5:30 PM.
Can I have a vote by the board to table this to December 21st, 5:30?
Make that
Motion?
motion.
Second,
Can I have a vote? Louis,
Yes.
Galter,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Jim,
yes.
John, yes. Vote passes 5-0, so we'll table this to the 21st. Thank you, guys.
Great. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks. Next on the agenda is approval of the minutes from November 2nd, 2020. Can I have a motion?
Please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, make it.
Second?
Second.
Can I have a vote? Louis,
Yes.
Galter,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
John, yes. Vote passes 5-0. We did have a change to the meeting for next year. The July meeting was bumped up to
The
12
12th.
because of the holiday. Can I have a motion for approval of the meeting, next meetings next year?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Okay, vote. Louis,
Yes.
Coulter,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes. with
John?
July 12 is the meeting.
Yes.
Okay.
Vote passes 5-0. Citizen input, I don't have any. Gonna have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I'll make that motion.
I will second it.
All righty. That's it.
No,
Everyone
you got
have-
to roll call.
Huh?
You got to do the roll call for all to vote
For what vote? The,
to adjourn.
oh. Forgot about that. Lewis,
Yes.
Golder,
Yes.
Andy,
Yes.
Jim,
Yes.
John, yes. Vote passes 5-0.